Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard, and today we're doing another equipment video. This is something, admittedly, I don't get asked too much about anymore, but I think it's always good to kind of revisit certain topics. And gear is one of those where, you know, what is good and what is bad, right? So here we have an attack speed piece of gear. So I have crit rate and attack speed on here. I love the synergies, but obviously notice that the rolls are low. And then the fact that this is also a red piece of gear, and I have 2 bad substats. This for me is a very easy to replace piece of gear. However, I do need this attack speed boost, or at least I'm used to playing with this attack speed boost on him, and these stats. So now I've kind of run into the problem of, well, I don't want to remove this piece of gear because now this piece of gear isn't just 48 attack speed, it's effectively 123. So yeah, right? How do we stop ourselves from getting trapped into boxes like this? And how do we determine like what is good or what is our next step? So that is going to be the review today. Last night I did a whole bunch of farming on Gear Raid 2 and Gear Raid 3 specifically. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of rings and stuff for us to look at, evaluate, determine when and why we should keep them, and hopefully some of this information is going to be good for you. So any first step to gearing up a champion should be review your champion, right? Sadie is not going to build the same way as Ezrein. A perfect example that I have here is that Sadie is an HP-based healer, and Ezrein is attack-based healing. So just on that alone, right, no 2 healers build the same way. And then if I'm going to really go like into real in-depth on this, Sadie, who has this, like, I call it a snowflake, I don't know what you guys call it, but this pattern that emanates from her as the epicenter, radiating outward, Sadie and Dolores build wildly differently, even though they have the same snowflake pattern. But yes, Dolores, we're not ever going to depend on her heals. Yes, it can be kind of like an extra bonus in terms of stats for her, but it's not the reason we play with Dolores. Sadie, on the opposite hand, we absolutely do want to be able to depend on her heals. We do want her heals as big and numerous as possible. So this is a perfect example of, I have just named 3 healers in the game. I know Dolores is support, but the purpose of the video is going to be, make sure that you're aware of your skill set, right? So if you are trying to say, hey, I'm trying to gear up Nyx, yes, you can kind of simplify it down and be like, okay, she deals damage and she deals AoE damage, so I want all the attack stats. Deals more AoE damage, got it, I want more attack stats. Deals even more damage, although this does attack based upon the return trip. Okay, so I actually want more attack stats than anything. However, attack speed's also going to be good on her, because the more times she's throwing out her dagger and it returning to her, the more damage she's going to be doing. So attack speed just became, you know, valuable, or it's an extra 50% attack. That's kind of amazing. And then here we can see, after attacking an enemy, deals 60% times 3. So we know that we want heavy influence on our attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage, and attack speed, and then flat attack if we can fit it in there. This is one of those champions where you do have to kind of pick. Do I want her exploding blades to be, you know, more powerful, or do I maybe want her attacking more frequently? In my opinion, and like this is a very humble thing, but Nyx has one of the slowest attack speeds in the game. She normally has a 3.5. Because of the attack speed I have on her, we have lowered her down to once every 2 seconds. This is a very good example of, I would rather have the attack speed, and she gets bigger benefits from having such a slow attack speed. If anybody's curious, go watch my attack speed video, and that kind of gives a good generalization to attack speed. It's not every nitty gritty of attack speed, but it's useful information. So yes, number 1, make sure that you have your champion and understand what they do. There are certain champions like Aracha where you know, it might seem straightforward that they just deal damage up front, but then she's got weird abilities like this spider toxin, which doesn't apply a poison or a burn, but it is 15% magic damage per second. So if I relied on her poison or wanted to rely more on her poison, I could add more into her flat attack. But the reality is most of the time that I use her, I want her to be throwing out this messy web. However, the messy web doesn't work on bosses. So depending on what level you're playing, you also might equip your champion differently. If I was fighting something like Dragon, attack percentage and flat attack are probably going to be a little bit better for me than attack speed. However, right, attack speed's still very valuable, and it's still very good for bosses. So there are going to be some decisions that you need to make about your champion. And last but not least, it does depend on what gear you have available, right? You can say, oh, I want these stats, I want these stats, I want these stats. But if you haven't gone and done the grinding, and if you have, like me, you have terrible luck, you might not have those pieces. So we are first going to get rid of trash gear first. So what do we mean by trash gear? Because I am a huge purveyor of this information. There is no trash gear in this game, right? Every piece of gear does have value. So again, last night I was farming gear raids 2 and gear raids 3. I just set, I popped a whole bunch of flasks. I threw it on auto so I wouldn't have to pay attention to it. And I haven't looked at any of the gear at all. So that means today's video, we're actually only going to be focused on rings, amulets, and bangles. I said that in the wrong order. Rings on the far right, amulets, and bangles. We are not going to be focused on weapons and armor. For you guys, as if you're watching my content, you are most likely a newer player. I will argue that I do think Gear Raid 1 is easier for most players, especially because you also start off with Voltus. Now accounts getting greed on them helps them out tremendously. And most often than not, most players get like an AoE mage at some point. Usually it's an epic, sometimes it's a legendary. And once you get one of them, one of the massive advantages that we have, I'm going to switch over to this real fast. One of the biggest advantages that we have for your Gear Raid 1, you only have 2 pieces to complete a gear set. So here we have the staff for Life Force, here we have the armor for Life Force. Because you can get a big chunk of stats from a 2-piece set. So in this case, again, in this video, we're only going to be talking about red gear because that's what I'm farming. You know, 25% HP is very noticeable. For my healers getting 25 healing effect, very noticeable. For my attackers, either attack speed, I have some of these locked, so they're not going to let me even view them. Game, you're ruining my point. Here we go. Down here we have attack speed. Down here we have attack speed. Man, I really need to go through these. Down here we have either like attack speed, or up here we even have attack percentage gear, right? These stat bonuses are going to be easier for you to get, and typically Gear Raid 1 is also kind of a little bit more straightforward. You just need to do a whole lot of damage to all the mobs, and it's kind of a swarm, kind of like what Tide feels like at first, where you're like, oh, this is awesome, it's just tons and tons of things coming and dying. Gear Raid 1 is kind of like Tide, where I think it's kind of some of the more fun content because in a sense it's a little brainless, but it's fun because it's just zergs of enemies that you're dealing with. So I will argue that you are going to get kind of your immediate or your first power-ups in Gear Raid 1. However, over time, I do think that this does change heavily. Around Gear Raid 1:13, I'm getting a lot of viewers coming in and saying that they're struggling. So the rest of this whole video is going to be talking about your Gear Raid 2 and Gear Raid 3. Not the strategies to beat them, but the rewards you get from them. Because, admittedly, one of the problems that we have with Gear Raid 1, all your primary stats are locked. You are either going to get flat attack or flat defense. Flat HP, pardon me. These are not bad stats for your characters. These can help greatly with survivability. I remember doing Gear Raid 113 and my champions dying to the poison and literally coming to the realization, oh my gosh, to go from yellow armor to red armor is such a massive bump up in HP, like a 1,700. If I just bump up in that armor, my champion shouldn't even die anymore. You know, like not only is healing going to be better, I'm going to heal for more, but wow, that jump up in HP, like I really shouldn't even die to begin with. And I was right. It was a massive, massive increase in some of those base stats. Flat attack isn't as bad as everybody says. And then more importantly, on your weapon, you do get an enormous amount of attack. So on red weapons, I do think you total out around like 960. So with that being said, 960 is a good chunk of attack stats. So for your basic, like let's say legendary piercer, we looked at the numbers and I was a little off, but ultimately we're going to be around 3,000 to 4,000. And I know that's a huge window, but still think about it. 960 is either 33% of that or 25%, maybe 24% of that. It's a very noticeable jump up in stats. So don't ignore, do not ignore your Gear Raid 1. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. So as I'm highlighting these 3 things to sell, I first want to get rid of any junk gear. Now, typically when I am farming, I have this one locked. Typically when I am farming, if I find a piece of gear and I'm like, ooh, there's a champion that I have that I think would take advantage of all these stats. So the current highlighted gear, we have a defensive bonus with HP bonus and attack speed and rage regen. I would argue that these 4 stats together are very good for a tank, right? Right now we don't have any like ranged defenders in the game. We don't have a platform champion that deals damage based upon their defense. It doesn't exist. Defense, HP bonus, and attack speed, that is a good core for our defenders. Now, not every defender really needs attack speed, so let's talk about Olog. Olog is just a big, beefy boy. We don't need anything offensive on him whatsoever. He can literally just be HP percentage, flat HP, defense percentage, flat defense, and then any other stat doesn't really matter. He might take advantage of certain things like healing effect, rage regen, or attack speed would let him get back to his next ult faster. So if you find yourself ulting a lot with Olog, there's a reason for that. But we don't really need this this attack bonus at the end. The reason that I specifically kept this gear is for a champion named Titus. I am planning on doing a Titus build at some point where I just increase all of his stats, his HP percentage, defense percentage, and HP, defense, and attack percentages. Yes, just all of the stats on him. I just want him to be this giant stat stick monster, and I want to see how he performs. So, I'm farming only red gear. So why do I still have certain yellow gear? Some of it is just because of the stats of it. It's good enough that I haven't found the ability to replace it yet. I could sell this amulet. I am probably never ever going to equip this amulet ever again. And specifically, I can't actually think of a champion that I would really want attack bonus, attack speed, crit rate, and then healing effect on. This amulet kind of was a double dipper. It was designed for my attack-based healers as well as my attacking champions. It could kind of switch between the two. I'm finally past that point, right? So I could get rid of these yellows because wow, that was a lot of clicks. The likelihood of me ever equipping these again is extremely minimal. So you know what? For this video, I am going to sell them because I don't think I am going to equip them again. For you guys, though, this like attack speed with crit rate and crit damage, this could still be a very valuable piece of equipment. Or if you don't have enough amulets on your account, or you're not getting amulets with your attack percentage and then really good substats, attack speed is perfectly fine. I really want to stress that. I do understand that it is not heavily in the meta. I do want to stress, though, that if you play with an enormous amount of attack speed, it does become difficult to stop playing with that enormous amount of attack speed. The game, I'm also pretty certain, is designed around the concept of you having like an attack speed necklace or a crit rate bangle on certain champions. But unfortunately, player meta, we have shifted that. And that's what happens. All right, so specifically, when we are talking about these accessories, the main thing that I want to stress more than anything is our primary stats. So flat attack, flat HP, and flat defense are just kind of out instantly. It is going to be excruciatingly hard for me to ever justify any of these gear to you because of the flat stats. Now, there is a incredibly small chance that something like this could become valuable one day. So I did keep this because at the time I was equipping like 20 champions. This flat attack with attack speed and crit damage was still pretty useful. Like it still put in enough work for me to be like, hey, this isn't awful. So for newer players or players that are like, hey, I don't have the unlimited ability to farm nonstop. Hey, cool. My gear's at 777. For players that don't feel like, hey, I can just farm incessantly on my account, gear like this can be useful. I will stress though, just because it's useful doesn't mean it's a keeper, right? So you might keep it and use it. However, if you get to the point where you are farming nonstop red gear, I will absolutely argue with you. This 525 here, it's just not noticeable. At minimum, you need to upgrade it to a red so that you're getting like another like 960, because another 400 attack again is meaningful. So earlier we were talking about a piercer having somewhere around like 3,000, which is kind of closer to your I think it's like Silas only has like 3,000, and then up towards 4,000, which is closer to your Crake or certain newer piercers. With that being said, you're still talking about a 30%, like a 33% down to 25%. This 525, you are dropping that percentage down to 15% through whatever 1/8 is. 12%? I think 8 times 12 is 96. So understand that is the jump from yellow to red gear. Now, does that mean if you have a great piece of yellow gear, so like the one necklace I was showing off earlier that I have unselected, if you have a piece of gear like that, is that worth replacing? Not necessarily, right? You could use, like if this was attack percentage as the primary stat, I would easily argue, yes, that's worth keeping. There's enough good stats on there, and you would just have to make up crit rate somewhere else. But as you get towards red gear, I will absolutely admit a lot of these stats start becoming like mandatory. Like if you want to see progress, and by progress, I don't mean the current level I'm playing. So like, let's say you're playing Gear Raid 1-15, right? Red gear will help you clear 115 super easy. You'll be like, oh, cool, I'm making a lot of progress. But if you go up to Gear Raid 118 or 119, certain stats that you have that aren't benefiting your champion will start to shine. So on this specific piece of gear, the main stat being flat attack, you will feel it. You will be like, my character is hitting like a wet noodle. What has happened to my character? And it is literally, hey, your primary stat isn't good enough here. Or maybe you have your primary stat is good, but like me, a lot of your gear had 2 bad substats on it. So we're going to pretend that this is perfect, that this is attack percentage ring. Rage, regen, and crit damage, yeah, cool, those are fine. Those are usable. Now, admittedly, I would prefer crit rate, but still good, right? But the HP bonus, it is a thumbs up stat. It is a good stat. It's not going to be bad on my attackers. But does it have my attackers dealing more damage? Majority of them, no. There are champions like Deimos who would take advantage of HP bonus. And then defense. Yes, Deimos is going to take advantage of defense. The problem is I need Deimos putting out as much damage as possible. So with these stats, he is not going to put out the most damage as possible. So I'm just going to kind of click through these one by one to show off what gear I was able to obtain. And we will talk about gear that I think is like super interesting. So this piece of gear, again, I understand that these are all flat. So none of these pieces of gear are ones that I would encourage you guys as newer players. Even getting a red piece of gear with like flat attack, you could argue, well, but couldn't I still use this? You could, right? Like if this is like the first red piece of gear that you get, it will feel like an improvement on your account. What I'm trying to warn you about is make sure it's on your radar to be replaced. So on my account, Comet is my best champion. If I gave him this, yes, he's going to hit a lot harder. The flat attack here is going to be good. The attack bonus is going to be great. And the attack speed is going to be great. He's going to hit a lot harder. But would he hit a crap ton harder if that was attack percentage up there? Absolutely. And then ideally, and again, here I would argue Comet is going to take advantage of 3 of the substats, right? Attack bonus, attack speed, and HP bonus. Or, I've referenced Deimos. Deimos literally would take advantage of every single one of the 5 stats here. So why not throw this on Deimos? Again, the reason is Deimos is going to benefit more from this being attack percentage. For those of you not aware, when it comes to red gear, and right now this is ancestral red gear because like it's glowing, it's of a higher nature. So instead of this capping off at 960, I have not leveled one of these up, and I'd rather not, to be honest with you. It's probably going to be like 1,000 or like 1,020, right? It's going to be a small bump above the normal. For attack percentage, though, right? So normally it's 960, and then for attack percentage, it's 60%. And I don't think OXL will let me do that. So again, I'm going to guess that this is 1020. I am making up a number. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But I do know for a fact this becomes 66%, right? So it's about a 10% increase. So kind of nice. So let's say that this is also a 10% increase. So it'd be an additional 96. So that would be 1056 is my best guess, right? With this being said, is 1056 still a very impressive number off of the piercers that we mentioned, or Deimos? Deimos is all 3s, right? Deimos is 3 as his attack. So the difference though is if we do that, the quad 3s times, I'm going to do 1.6 because Deimos would retain his damage. So that's the 1. 0.6 is to add 60% onto his attack to show what his current attack with 60% on it would be. And as you can see, that is a lot higher than if we do that plus what are we at? A63. So here we can see we get a clear advantage of about 1,000, right? It's a little bit less than 1,000, but that is a huge discrepancy in how much he's actually gaining. So this is why a lot of us veteran players are telling newer players that the flat stats are not as valuable as we think they are. They will be helpful. I don't want to discourage players. Like, you know, if you just start farming and you get like a red piece, yes, this crazy amount of defense that you're suddenly adding will feel very good. Actually, that's kind of interesting. I didn't notice that. Attack is 296, but defense is only 111. So you're getting a lot less from defense. You definitely want defense percentage for sure. Holy crap. I assumed they were the same number. I've actually never looked into that. The more you know. But yeah, with this being said, right? Have a champion in mind when you are looking through some of this gear. Here we have HP, defense. So as a tank, that is actually not a terrible spread of stats. Now, what I mean by a tank, I am talking more like your Olog. A tank where you are never ever going to depend on their damage for, and you just want them to live under all circumstances. So what I mean by this, there are champions like Azor where you actually can build him like he scales off of his defense and he deals more damage based upon his defense. He's also a nightmare, which the nightmares, we typically need them to hit harder. Azor is a good example of, yes, he would be tankier in this gear, but he also wouldn't be as effective as he could be, right? Azor is also one of those champions where you actually might want defense percentage as your main stat because his damage also scales off of defense. Majority of tanks, we would much rather have them with HP percentage 99% of the time. So it does depend on which tank you are talking about. So please understand that when we try to talk about artifacts, this is why it's so complicated, is that, are you talking about all defenders? All defenders, yes, they would much rather have HP percentage than defense percentage. But there are some. Muriel is another example. Muriel is an epic. She has one of the highest magic resists in the game for defenders. So there's now Azor, Constance, who is brand new to the game, and Muriel are 3 of your defenders with very, very high magic resistance. This doesn't come into play a whole lot, but now that like Guild Wars is getting a little bit more popular, having a magic resistant tank might be more useful than people think it is. The other instance of it is if you go into like chapter 9 in the campaign, right now we as in veteran players don't heavily encourage it, but there are going to be players that are like, hey, I do want to push my chapter 9. That's fine. Understand you're going to want a magic resistant tank or a tank with an enormous HP pool. Like everything, HP percentage, and even on their weapons and armor, good rolls of HP percentage. Here's an interesting piece of gear, right? So we have flat attack with crit rate, attack bonus, and crit damage. If this was one of your first red pieces, that is very worth keeping. One of the other big reasons that this is very worth keeping for like somebody just getting red is that you don't have your crit rate and attack bonus on this last slot. This last slot is a money sink. Understand that if you're like, use your gold the way that you want to, but understand that some of the red pieces of equipment become extremely expensive to upgrade once you get to this 4th slot. Upgrading a piece of yellow, you'll be like, oh, once I get to this last slot, that's when it starts to get a little bad. Some of these, it's like 20,000 or 25,000 a roll, right? So even if you fail, you're still dropping 20 grand. 20 grand is a drop in the bucket for me, right? I'm at 19 million right now, but understand 20 grand at 12 attempts there, I'm down to 19 million flat. And 20 attempts is not really unrealistic to lose on red pieces of gear. So understand that this last slot, depending on what it is, could make your yes, do I keep it, or no, do I not keep it. So I'm actually really happy to show off this piece. This piece as well, I would argue, is going to give any of your attackers a big boost. So on my account, I have like a 5-star Selkie. Selkie would still probably benefit from this piece of gear. Now, will he benefit more from this up top being attack percent? Oh, absolutely. But in terms of me just getting all the damage stats on my Selkath at first, this could be that way to get temporary stats on him or usable stats. So if I'm only using Selkie in my faction trials, this could be something I could upgrade. Again, though, I feel like the further in you get, the pickier you need to be. I've spent a lot of time talking about pieces of gear that we don't want to keep. So I'm going to click through these a little bit faster. Yes, I am aware that there's a select all button up there. So let's actually take advantage of that. We will select everything and gain 500,000 in gold. You have selected a high quality, well-enhanced item. Do you want to sell it anyways? I love this. This is a very nice feature of the game to be like, hey, are you sure you want to sell everything? Yes. All right, so the next 2 stats that I encourage players to kind of go through is healing effect and then crit damage would be the next big one, and we'll go through that in a moment. The reason for healing effect, majority of your champions are not going to be able to take good advantage over healing effect. Majority of the times, it's just your healers. Right now, we don't have like a damage-based healer like that deals more damage based upon their healing effect. I'm sure that will come up in the future, but right now, there is no reason for things like crit rate and crit damage on a healer, with a singular exception. There is a chaotic healer that does have a reason, I think just for crit rate. He gets a bonus to healing from his crit rate modifier. And then Light Lock would be the other one, where crit rate is not necessarily bad. So, with this being said, you might have to look through these a little bit more difficult. This is a perfect healing piece of equipment, right? So we have healing effect, we have attack speed, which is absolutely what every healer wants. We have HP bonus and defense bonus. So if I have an HP-based healer or a defense-based healer, this piece of equipment's pretty amazing. And then Rage Regen isn't necessarily a bad stat. It's not a terrific stat, but I'm going to lock that in place to be like, no, I don't want to sell that. Here again, we have healing effect with attack bonus and attack speed, so very good stats. HP bonus is great for survivability, or the fact that I can say this is an HP healing effect. So somebody like Vortex, somebody like Sadie could take good advantage of this. So I'm going to hold on to it. Again, anything that I'm holding on to, I'm going to lock into place just so I don't accidentally sell it. Pardon me, definitely needed that drink. I'm drinking apple cider, by the way, if anybody's curious. Here is where getting a little bit more picky does help. So here we have attack bonus, HP bonus, and defense bonus. So we kind of have all the stats here. There's no specific healer that I want in this piece of gear, right? So that makes this very easy for me to sell. There's nobody jumping out to me to be like, ooh, you know who really needs this? My Muriel could take good advantage of this. She might, but that's not what I want for my Muriel. So again, here we have HP bonus, crit attack. Also, 2 bad substats is a very good way for us to consider. And we call them bad substats because there's almost no champion that really wants both bad substats. Again, there's certain ones like tanks, like Olog, who might be okay with flat HP and flat defense. But that would also be under the condition that you have HP bonus and defense bonus on that piece of gear. Here we have attack bonus and attack speed, so very good for an attack-based healer. However, 2 flat stats, I don't love it. Crit damage paired with healing effect. That is our dump slot, right? So for our attackers, if this was attack percentage, healing effect is usually like the dump stat where we're like, oh, that's a completely worthless stat on this champion. I would rather, right, like on healing effect, I would rather have flat HP over crit damage. Right now, there's 0 reason to ever have crit damage. Now here we do have the defense, and HP bonus. So this could be a usable piece of gear because that's at least 3 stats that I do want on a healer. That's tons of survivability and some big healing effect stats. However, where I am at with my healers, I absolutely need attack speed on my healers. That has become a must on my account. So for me, if the gear doesn't have attack speed, it's probably not going to make the cut. So again, we can just kind of click through these and things like this. Healing effect with attack speed, flat attack, and attack bonus. There is the argument for our attack-based healers that this could be a very good piece of gear. So I am going to hold on to it. Also, one of the reasons I want to hold on to it, I do think Watcher of Realms eventually might have to rebalance their damage calculations. Because right now there's just too much emphasis on stacking your primary stat and only your primary stat. I foresee in the future, it might not be for like another year, maybe even 2 years, but I would foresee them changing certain things and being like, hey, we do need a healing effect to be more powerful. We would rather our healers be playing with healing effect as a primary stat, not with them playing with attack bonus as the primary stat. So for that reason, you might see me keeping things. And again, I have no insight. I have nobody from Watcher of Realms telling me this. I have no way to confirm or deny it. And again, I said next 1 to 2 years. They might not ever change their damage formula. But again, I'll just kind of click through these. Again, these should be an easy dump for you, right? It should be a pretty easy to say, hey, unless I need this for a very specific healer that I have on my account. And I would not keep something like, so earlier I talked about there's a chaos healer that does benefit from crit rate. There's no way that I'm keeping this for a champion I don't have, right? I hate to say it. Sell it off. You don't need it. Definitely don't upgrade it if you don't have the champion. But yeah, there's certain things like this where, ooh, there's enough interesting stats on here. I could throw this on like a light lock, right? Light lock would literally benefit from every single stat here. I actually am going to keep this because that is every good stat for a healer, specifically an attack-based healer. If it was a defense or HP-based healer, I could argue that the attack bonus is the bad stat on there then. So here I have this one locked into place, HP bonus, defense bonus, and rage regen. So the reason I saved this is that this is healing effect, and then the gear set, this Asclepius, not sure what that word is, but whatever it is, having max HP and healing effect, and again we have healing effect and max HP on this, made this a piece of gear that I was like, ooh, I probably should keep that. That's too much synergy across the main sets and the set bonus for me to ignore. But I don't always consider the set bonus. Right now, I definitely consider get your main stats locked in, and where I am going on my account, I am finally reaching like the gear raids like 219, 319, 119. I will say when you get to those, I do think that these gear sets do matter a lot. Attack bonus, attack. Defense bonus, defense. I will never keep these. Again, there's not really a champion that I would argue this could be good on. Even if you were like, well, what about my healers, right? Or, hey, I just pulled Hollow onto my account. Wouldn't attack bonus and a flat attack be good on her with healing effect? Yes, right? Like, none of these stats are going to be bad on Hollow. But is that how I want to build my Hollow? No, unfortunately, I would much rather the attack bonus be the primary, and then I would want flat attack, healing effect, attack speed, and then maybe HP bonus or defense bonus would be very good. So again, here we have crit damage. Whenever I see this, the piece of gear kind of gets like an instant -1, right? It's got to be like I'm probably not gonna pardon me, I am still getting over an illness. But this crit damage is kind of like an instant -1. Just like when we're looking at attack-based gear, majority of the time if we see healing effect, it's kind of an instant -1, unless we're talking about very select champions, right? Like Wrath has self-healing in his kit. Deimos, Salazar, they have self-healing in their kits. But Comet has no self-healing in his kit. So Comet would never want to see healing effect on any of his items. Again, here we have crit rate and crit damage. If these were swapped, right? Crit damage is kind of a -1, and then the flat defense and flat HP are also a -1. That's just too many minuses all across this piece of gear. If crit rate was the last stat, I do want to stress that makes upgrading those pieces of gear very difficult. Speak of the devil. So here, let's say we're making things up entirely. Let's say I love this piece of equipment, and the first 3 stats are good, and for me, the selling point of this gear is the crit rate. Like, ooh, do I upgrade this? Because if the crit rate rolls well, I'm set. These top 3 stats would have to be perfect, right? You'd have to be talking about, so for healing effect, let's like talk about what we would want on a healer. That's a terrible example. I'm sure we'll get across to another one. Here we have healing effect plus 25. When deployed, the hero and one random ally in range gain 10% attack. So this is one of those times that healing effect and attack bonus synergize really well. I don't know who I would want in this gear. Like, Dolores kind of comes to mind, except that Dolores, I don't really care if she has the healing effect. From Invigoration. Even if you go for, like, attack-based healers, so like your Nisande, like Hollow, Lightlock. I'm thinking of all the other ones now. I'm thinking of all the HP-based healers. Whomever else that they would gain an advantage for you having, like, stacking attack on them, there is a small argument that, like, this Invigoration set could be really good to give your healer a big boost and then them and a random ally in range. And random isn't always bad because that is a pretty easy thing to set up of, cool, I'm going to summon Comet, I'll summon healer next to them. The two of them will get the attack bonus. Great, my Comet's now doing 10% more damage. That could also be a very funny, easy way to cheese a level. You could do something like this on, if you're doing like a Gear Raid 1, and let's say your Comet is not doing enough damage, like mine is currently not doing, this could be a way for me to give Comet more stats without it being directly on Comet. So, very interesting gear. I'm going to hold on to that just out of curiosity. Here we have healing effect with attack speed, HP bonus, and defense bonus. So for me, this is a very good piece of gear for any of my HP healers or defense healers. I am going to keep that for now. Here we have attack bonus, flat attack, crit damage. Those 3 on a healing piece, unfortunately, are not good. So I feel okay selling that. This, you know, is a good example of, I kept this as a defensive healing item for like somebody like Muriel, as an example. Muriel would take very good advantage of all of these stats, so I'm definitely going to hold on to that. And then here, this was a glowing piece of healing effect item. Again, attack speed is good. HP bonus is still good. Rage regen, I'm not 100% sure works on healers. More testing is required, but I'm holding on to it just because I like all the stats on there. I just have definitely not found somebody I wanted on. And also, you have 1,000 slots. Don't be afraid to keep some pieces of gear where you're like, there's just too much good on this piece of gear that I don't want to sell it. It's fine, hold on to it, right? It's not going to kill you, but I would encourage you, don't go upgrading it to plus 16 if you don't have a plan for that to be on a champion. Alright, so then, again, I do crit damage. Now, the huge thing with crit damage, you could easily do this. Throw crit rate on it, because, in my opinion, crit damage is a completely worthless stat until you crit, right? Like, you get a 0% benefit from crit damage. Like, yes, it'll raise your BP, but when you actually go into a level, it does not help you at all until you crit. So in my case, I sorted by crit damage as the primary and then crit rate, because it's going to be excruciatingly hard to keep any piece of gear that is crit damage if it doesn't have crit rate as a substat, unless you're like specifically talking about somebody like Azoth who has extra crit rate in their kit, or if you have enough crit rate elsewhere. So you don't necessarily 100% need crit rate on it. I am telling you from experience that majority of players, we want to see crit rate on our crit damage gear. So I could look at this and be like, okay, crit damage and crit rate, that's good, but then I have a whole bunch of other stats that don't synergize with the damage aspect. So absolutely not. Here I have 2 good stats. I have crit damage, attack speed, and crit rate. That was enough for me to lock this in place. Yes, HP bonus isn't great to see. However, I could throw this on Gluttony. So I do have a champion that would take advantage of every single stat here. So that is why that is locked. Here again, we have crit damage with crit rate, attack speed, and attack bonus. So that's going to get upgraded today for sure. What I am looking for here is, do I want to lock these in place, right? Is this good enough for me to keep? And this is kind of a great example of what my luck is like on this game. I have a lot of gear like this. So we have the primary stat is fine. We have 2 substats that are good, and then 2 awful substats. Or maybe like, even if it was defense percentage, where I'd be like, ooh, that's a little bit better. Still not great. I am getting to a point in the game, this is getting too hard for me to hold on to. Even if it rolled perfectly, right? So let's say this crit rate rolls way up here into the high purple or yellow, and the attack bonus was to do the same. I could then use it, yes, but it would still be on my radar of, I need to replace that instantly. So I am not going to keep pieces of gear like this anymore, even though this kind of pains me, because this could roll well. That's the problem though. In order for me to keep it, in order for it to be at all useful, it has to roll well. For players going from like yellow to red gear, I would argue that if the crit rate and attack bonus rolled around 10%, it's worth keeping. But this is where we're talking again about what's in that 4th slot. The fact that one of your main substats is all the way in that 4th slot will make this a very expensive upgrade. So make sure that this is very worth your time. So if I rolled this and the crit rate was anything below this 2nd notch, I probably would not keep it. Obviously, it does depend on the percentage and how my characters are geared up. So if I have a whole bunch of yellow gear that has like 13% crit rate and this rolled to 15%, there's an argument to keep it then. But for majority of players, it's kind of a good example that if you started rolling this, and let's say the crit rate rolled way down here in the first section, it was like a 3% or a 5%. No, stop rolling it. Don't roll any further. And that's one of the disadvantages to the instant roll to 16 mechanic that they have now. Bebok, can you reroll stats in this game? No. Currently, no. There are players who are asking about that as a feature. Watcher of Realms has not confirmed or denied at all whether or not it's coming or what their method for that would be. One of the best games that has done something similar to that, if you ever played through Diablo 3, they had a way where you could re-roll one stat on a piece of item. And then it was gotcha, where like you would sacrifice the stat, right? So let's say I chose this defense, and then you could re-roll it and it would just be any other stat. So it wouldn't be crit damage, crit rate, or attack bonus, but that means it could roll into attack speed. And that was a great example of, that's all this piece of item needs, right? I don't mind paying the extra to turn this crappy item into a very good, usable item. So I do agree with you. I hope it's coming. I have no information to say when or if it's coming. I would not hold gear based upon the hope that it might come. I would definitely wait until they hard announce it. And if they're smart, because this is a gacha game, and like that's something I think would be very good in a gacha game, just have it be like, first you have to upgrade the item to like level 16, then you can re-roll stats. That would be an ingenious way to have a giant resource dump on your account. Moonton takes a while on its updates. I don't agree with that at all. I think they do a very good job of updating this game. So crit damage, we have rage regen, attack speed, so those two stats synergize very well, and crit rate, so I am going to keep this. I will lock it in place. It's not an instant upgrade for me, but it's an interesting piece of, cool, I could definitely use that. So same thing here, I have crit damage with crit rate and attack bonus, all good stats, And then Rage Regen would help me get to ultimates faster, so that's why that's locked into place. Here we have crit damage with crit rate and attack bonus, and those are in the first 3, so I feel better. However, like I said earlier, I'm getting to the point where this is going to be like a last-ditch effort for me to upgrade. I'm going to hold on to it for now, but I'm also not happy about holding on to it. Crit damage with crit rate, HP bonus, and flat HP. I could argue using this for Gluttony. I'm not gonna. I played MLA for the last year and a half. I just switched this game. Cool. If you have any questions, let me know. Right now I'm recording an artifact. An artifact? I always say that. An item video for YouTube. I should be done in the next like 5 to 10 minutes. I've kind of stretched it out much further than I should have. So crit damage with crit rate, attack speed, HP bonus, and defense bonus. So again, this is where I would argue that if I'm using this on somebody like Gluttony for HP, or like, let's say, Azor for defense, this piece of gear does technically have a place. I would argue, though, majority of my damage dealers, they're not really wanting like crit damage with these defensive stats, or my tanks ideally would want HP bonus or defense bonus as the top stat. So I'm just going to sell this. I don't foresee me keeping it. Also, the set bonus, the max HP could synergize well with the HP bonus up here. It's too wishful. It's too wishful is the quick answer. I think it would be too much of a stretch for me to commit to. Here we have some good stats, right? Attack bonus, flat attack, and crit rate. Again, I would much prefer to see that being attack speed, but I would still argue this is a good enough piece of gear that could add some valuable damage to a character. Crit damage, crit rate, attack, and attack speed. So again, all good stats there. Again, this attack, flat attack, I wish was attack percentage, but we will definitely hold on to that. And then I am finally at the point where yellows, I can say, no, I don't need yellows anymore. So let's go ahead and sell that. So now that I've locked all these ones with crit rate that I want to keep, I am going to unselect crit rate. And we could look through these one by one and be like, okay, what else like slipped through the cracks? The reason I'm saying this is, yes, I probably never want crit damage with a bunch of these defensive stats or healing stats. What I'm looking for, though, is things like this, where it would be crit damage, attack bonus, attack speed, could be good, because I could realistically get the attack, the crit rate somewhere else. However, like I said, on my account, I'm trying to be more and more picky. So for me, I need 3 good substats down here. So we're just going to dodge all the locked items and see if I find anything where I'm like, ooh. So here we have like attack speed and rage regen. Great synergy between those two stats. But the flat attack just makes it too difficult. And that is why we went through the crit rate version first, is that is going to be the huge deciding factor. This as well, right? This is that trifecta that I was talking about where this could be kept. I don't like the set bonus and I don't like the flat HP here. So that, for that reason, this isn't worth me keeping. There is a small chance I could argue to keep this, especially because it's in the ring slot. So typically when I gear, I go through my weapon and armor first, and then I come over here to my rings, amulets, and bracelets. For that reason, I usually do go bracelet, amulet, then ring. So at that point, it is the 5th item I'm putting on. I could justify keeping this. I'm not gonna. I'm just not gonna keep it. Here we have crit damage with attack bonus and attack speed. If this was HP bonus, I would be more inclined to keep it. Again, I don't have a champion really mentally lined up that I want to keep it for. This is a very interesting one. This is one I will keep, right? So it's the same thing. We have the flat attack, attack bonus, and attack speed. But we have HP bonus, which is still a good stat for our attackers. But then we also have the good set, right? After the ultimate is cast, damage increases by 10% permanently, stacking up to 5 times, so until the level is over. There is enough good on here, I could justify using this. Or I could justify putting crit rate in all the other slots up to 100% or up to the 80% I need for certain champions. So that is something I do think is worth keeping. And in perfect contrast, I could keep this, but I could not justify 2 pieces of gear without the crit rate, right? You're talking you would need perfect crit rolls, crit rate rolls on other things. Hey Trax, how you doing, brother? Have I seen the new champion Elder? I'm aware that he exists, but have I played with him? No. Somebody was just in here yesterday asking the exact same thing. Was that you? So here we have a ring again with crit damage, attack speed, attack bonus, and flat attack. Again, I'm going to keep this one because of the Infernal Roar set. I do want to try to make an Infernal Roar champion today. I've gotten enough gear that I think I have the potential. John Sturgis, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate the follow. Welcome, welcome. Here we have crit damage, crit rate, and attack speed. Crit rate and attack speed are growing so heavily on me in this game. So absolutely, I'm going to keep that. It doesn't feel terrific, but again, it is the crit damage and crit rate. So yes, it feels great. So all of those that have been selected can pass. So, other pieces of gear that we didn't really touch on. Well, what about like our HP percentage or defense gear, right? Again, for me, this is very champion specific. This is, again, wow, we have a lot of defense gear to go through. I am not going to go through all this gear on stream, but here, we will get rid of all these yellows. We're definitely not going to be using yellows anymore on my account. Again, use what makes the most sense for you. So I'm going to first go by HP percentage. And I know that if I have HP percentage on the character, I also am going to want defense percentage. That is just becoming a staple decision for me on my account. So all of these are like up for consideration that I would keep them, right? So here, defense feels good. Crit rate could be good on like a champion like Azor, but probably not going to keep it. This is literally where you have to have a very specific champion in mind. So again, I named Gluttony a whole lot. Gluttony is an HP fighter, but let's say we were going to go off of like a tank, like Baron, right? Baron could absolutely take advantage of every one of these stats. So for that reason, I will hold on to that because I do want my Baron to be doing better than what he currently is. Right now, my Baron hits like a wet noodle, and I hate that. Again, here, I could still argue the same thing. Baron would take advantage out of all these stats. But I definitely don't want flat attack on any of my tanks. Anybody that wants HP bonus probably doesn't want flat attack. So for some of these, it's going to be easier. Ideally, what my brain is instantly looking for is HP, defense. If I see that, it's probably going to be a keep for me. So here we go. HP, defense. I'm going to keep that because for my tanks or for certain support champions I have, that is exactly what they need. So HP with attack. Again, there's very, very few champions I can think of that would ever take advantage of that, so I don't want to keep it. Here we have HP, defense, crit rate. Again, that's for somebody that I want to be doing damage from a tank. And I know that sounds strange, but there's champions like Azor or Baron where I might want them to be outputting some damage. Recently, though, talking with my guild leader, we did kind of agree. HP, defense, and attack speed. This is kind of my favorite piece that I will absolutely hold on to every time. John Sturgis, can you please talk in chat? And if you can't talk in chat, please stop whispering me. Because there's not a single reason on this given earth you could not talk to me in chat for everybody to see. Here we have HP, defense. So could use this like on a defensive tank like Muriel with healing effect. Again, this is something I can justify for a champion like Muriel. I don't foresee me ever using this specifically for Muriel, right? I'd kind of prefer the HP, defense, healing effect for Muriel. HP, defense, rage regen. This is good enough. This would still let my tanks get to their ultimate faster, so I am okay with this. Rage regen does only activate on attack from what I've seen. So for any players that are wondering how rage regen works, there is a rage regen video. I'll link that down below. Crit damage. This is the one stat I don't want to see anywhere in here. Now there is a small argument that here the rage regen, this specific set, there is a small reason that I might want to keep this specific set. I do want to test something else, so I'm going to hold on to it, but I'm only holding on to it for the set bonus, not the stats up here. Although the stats up here being HP, defense is perfect for the champion I want to test it on, so we'll see how that video comes out later. HP, defense, healing effect. It is okay enough that I could hold on to it, but I don't know who I want with crit rate and healing effect, and then all defensive stats, so I won't keep that. HP, defense, crit rate, crit damage, and rage regen. So if you had a tank that you constantly need going into their ultimate or doing damage, so this is a good example for our Gluttony. I am going to keep that for Gluttony, because that's a very interesting, like, it is mostly offensive with the defensive stats on. I could foresee me using this on a champion there. HP, defense, HP, defense, attack bonus, yeah. A lot of these are pretty easy to just glance at and be like, no, I don't want to keep that. Again, think about what tanks you have on your account, or what like HP-based champions you have on your account, because that should be the deciding factor for you when looking through gear. Every player also has stats that they prefer. So like, I might prefer attack speed. You might say, hey, I've had really good luck with rage regen. Why are you not more focused on rage regen? HP bonus with healing effect and attack speed. This could be really good on an HP based healer with the defense bonus. All of those are good stats I want on a healer with one bad stat of crit damage. This could be worth keeping for players. I am definitely at a point where this is kind of getting too hard to keep. I could throw this on somebody like Vortex or another HP based healer I have. I actually think Sadie might be. I guess I'll hold on to it for the moment, but I don't hope to use that. That's going to be one of those last upgrades. Here, this is the same piece that we saw earlier, but it's on another piece, so I'm going to hold on to that for Baron. For if I ever get to the point where I'm like, I just want to work on Baron gear, but understand of how specific that is. HP, defense with attack. HP, defense with attack speed makes me really like this piece of the gear. The flat attack does not feel good. Here's something interesting as well. This insight set, so crit rate, each time your basic attack deals single target damage, and additional true damage equals to 10 times the caster. I would argue that this is not super valuable on like a tank by any means. However, this could be a way for you to have your tanks doing some damage and more impressively doing true damage, which is can't be negated by any effect. It's just HP or healing is really the only way to stop true damage, right? Oh, having more HP stops you from dying quickly, and then healing back off the damage that you've taken from true damage. Really the only way to interact with it. So there is a extremely small niche here that I could say, well, if I needed one of my tanks that when they're tanking the boss and attacking back, this would let them have extra crit rate and do some true damage to them. Again, though, I think that moment is extremely thin. I think to depend on that as a gear set, it's just too much. Whereas something like this, if this was crit rate here, or if the attack bonus here was crit rate, this would be much more justifiable to hold on to. It feels good. We're almost at the top, and then we'll probably call the video there. I am getting to the point where, in terms of what I value... Oh, actually, you know what? Let's do attack percentage real quick, because I think... I was trying to leave that for later in the video. I know this is a long video. I apologize, but hopefully you guys are getting the information that you want from it. Hopefully that you're like, hey, no, this was very interesting, or it was cool because I saw this piece of gear and I thought, hey, that actually would be really good on Gluttony. And you were like, no, it's terrible. Yes, you could argue that every single stat here Gluttony could take effect of. I do think that they have reprogrammed Gluttony to only be off of HP stats. So these attack stats are no longer valuable on him. You could again argue that these stats could all be used by Baron. The healing effect would be the one that he couldn't take advantage of. However, you could give him an artifact to heal himself whenever his shield ends, which then he would take advantage of the healing effect. That is such a hoop to jump through, right? That's like very, very account specific. Like, I only have Baron as an epic tank, and I want him to be doing some big damage. Okay, that piece is good enough for Baron. But yes, eventually you get to this point where you're like, cool, I can pretty much glance through a lot of stats. Or if I see certain stats, like on this one, I see crit damage, I'm instantly turned off, right? So yes, the HP bonus, defense bonus, attack speed, and healing effect actually should have made me keep this. But I did get too turned off by the crit damage. So I am going to lock that into place and keep it after all. We make mistakes. All right, so I would ultimately do the same thing with defense, except I would be pickier about defense because defense is not a stat in this game you can heavily invest into. Yes, it can slow down damage, but it is definitely weaker than HP bonus. And the reason behind this is if your champions take magic damage, defense bonus does nothing. So for defense bonus, it pretty much has to have HP bonus on it. I can't really think of any stats where I would be like, no, you could do... I guess like a champion like Gon. Gon is like I believe a Chaos Lord, whose damage scales off of defense. For him, I guess you could argue he might not 100% need HP bonus. He probably wants HP bonus though. So, yeah. I'm also not going to go through crit rate. Now, this crit rate only affects Bangles, which actually this went really fast. So, yeah, let's do Bangles real fast of crit rate. So, for crit rate, I have to see the right damage stats for who I want the gear for, right? So, typically, I'm not going to be using crit rate Bangles. This is a decision choice up to you. The massive advantage for any player to use a crit rate bangle is you can get up to 60 or 66% crit rate just from a single item. So that means 3 gear slots or 2 perfect rolls of crit rate could be reduced, right? So if you use a bangle, that means that your amulet and your ring don't need to have crit rate on them. So that's why we kept some of those pure damage stat items earlier. There is enough of a reason to justify doing this. However, the way the game is currently balanced, crit rate as your primary stat is very hard to justify. Yes, it can save you from needing crit rate on your other things, but that means those other things would have to roll very high. So by playing with a crit rate bangle, this can help you reach your crit rate needs when you're just starting off, or if you get a red piece of gear with crit rate, yes, it's probably worth you saving. As you get more advanced, as you get closer to, like, let's say the gear stage is 19, any of those 19, I will argue tooth and nail, it's going to be very hard currently to play with crit rate as a main stat. The damage that you need is so high, you would need at minimum purple rolls on everything to have like a purple attack percentage, whatever else. So we're going to quickly go through these. Here, seeing crit rate and healing effect, again, there's one champion in the game, and unless he's your absolute favorite healer, that is a dead stat for you for crit rate. Then having 3 bad substats on here, it's just too much. It's too much to even look at. Crit rate with attack bonus, and attack speed, that's a keeper. We'll hold on to that. I would much prefer to see crit damage over flat attack, but flat attack does increase our base damage. So here we have the trifecta. This is near impossible for me to ever justify. This specific item, I'm going to keep for Titus. Again, I'm doing something goofy on Titus. I don't think I'll use this piece, but this would let me get my crit rate up to where I want to on Titus. So for the overly specific reason of Titus, I'm going to keep it. This piece of gear, this is a perfect conversation piece. I would argue this is worth keeping, right? Crit rate, attack bonus, and attack speed, all good stats, worth you keeping. And then these being at the second and third substat, mean it's not too much of an investment for you to explore to see if this is worth keeping. What stinks, though, is that if the attack bonus rolls low, that's very bad for you. And then same thing with attack speed. Now, attack speed, I would argue 30 and above is very, very valuable in this game. 25 is kind of that, that sucks, but it's still good. It will still shave off about 0.2 seconds off of majority of champions. And then for your much slower champions like Nyx, Crake, or anybody else with a 3 and above attack speed, it does shave off like 0.4 off of them. It's a noticeable amount. Again, watch the attack speed video if you want to see the exact math on it. This could be something worth keeping. Where I am at on my account, I need 3 substats. I have to have 3 substats. So for that reason, where I am at, I cannot justify keeping this. And that's kind of painful because I do like all these stats, but it's just not in the cards. So here, a flat attack bonus, and HP bonus. Players can argue that they might want to keep this, but again, it's one of those heavy investments to find out if it's good or not. Be cautious with pieces of gear like this. So that looks like another one I've kept for, what's his name? So here we have crit rate and crit damage. That's absolutely what I want to see. But then I would need to see like my attack percentage on here, and it's not on here. So for that reason, I'm selling that. I'm not even going to entertain the concept of, well, what about a champion like Gluttony? Again, Gluttony, I think I would want to stack all HP percentage on him, so I'm not going to keep it for that reason. Here we have the attack bonus, but then we only have defensive stats, so definitely not going to keep it. Crit damage and attack bonus, good. Rage regen, I could get behind it, right? It's kind of that medium stat where I'm like, okay, yes, it's usable, but it's also not great for me to see. And then healing effect, again, on the right champion. So somebody like Deimos, Salazar, any of the Wrath, any champion that is doing damage and healing themselves could take good advantage of this. Wrath is also kind of a really good example as a champion that crit rate gear could be like a crit rate as the main stat could be very good. because then that means the rest of your gear could just be focused on hard crit damage, attack percentage, and flat attack. But then you're also building around, like, all of his other gear is then based around you having this piece of gear. That means that if you were ever to get a crit damage as the main stat with crit rate and other good stats, you couldn't switch to it without having to rebuild Wrath. So that's the big reason. This isn't bad when you're first getting your red pieces of gear, but understand that eventually you are going to want to upgrade, and that might mean re-gearing up your champion from scratch. Here we have crit rate and crit damage, but then defensive stats. Nope. Crit rate with attack bonus, crit damage, and attack. I will hold on to that. That will probably be for like a faction war champion, or maybe even like my Tide champion. I don't expect this to be good. This is not going to be like one of my main pieces of gear. It has good potential to it though, and right now I'm switching gear all over the place constantly. This could be a big time save for me. I don't think I'll heavily invest in it though. Too many defensive stats on that. Too many defensive stats on that. Too many defensive. Too much defense. Defense. Again, HP bonus, HP healing effect, crit damage, crit rate could argue for gluttony, right? There is the argument here that there's enough reason to keep that for gluttony. So I will hang on to that one specifically. Crit rate, attack, attack speed, and attack bonus. If that had crit damage on it, I would say that's a very worthwhile piece to keep. The rage regen still makes it interesting. So any champion that I want, just a whole bunch of offensive stats on, I'm going to hold on to it. Again, I'm not sure when I'll use it, but it's one of those very interesting pieces. Maybe I'll do something with it. Here, again, you could argue that all these stats are okay on somebody like Deimos or Gluttony, that you could use these on them. It's too much of an ask in my opinion, so I'm just going to go ahead and sell those. All right, final stretch, and then my voice gets a break for a little bit. We are going to do attack bonus. Now, attack bonus, I think, is going to be one of the easier ones for me to instantly eliminate options from. So if it has attack bonus on it, I absolutely really don't want to see things like defense bonus 8, and then like 3 of these substats, right? So nothing shows up there, so that's fine. But these 3 did show up, which is not good. So here I have attack bonus with defense and defense percentage. I'm not sure why I have this locked. I'm definitely not going to keep that though. Here, attack bonus with attack speed and flat attack. So I get why some of these I've held on to, but that's just too many defensive stats. And as we talked about earlier, I am certainly at a point now I need to be picky with gear. So let's get picky with gear. There we go. So here we have attack bonus with crit damage. I do like to see that, but I would need to see crit rate on here as well. Attack bonus, flat attack, attack speed, but then 2 defensive stats. So still running into that problem a whole lot. Attack bonus with flat attack on it isn't necessarily bad. My biggest issue is I need things like this crit damage. And then again, for me to want to keep this ring, I really would want to see crit rate here would make me absolutely keep this gear and love it. And then if this was HP bonus, I also could argue maybe I would keep it. Unfortunately, it's just not. Here we have attack bonus with crit rate and flat attack. I could argue that this is maybe worth keeping. I'm going to roll it up to 4, and then I'll decide from there. If the crit rate rolls very high, I might keep this around for a bit. I will argue, I don't love this piece at all. I am saying, though, that where I'm at in the game, attack bonus and crit rate, this could help me meet certain criteria. I don't love the concept of keeping it, but since I haven't rolled to 3, I can roll to 4 just to see, is it worth it? All right, so now that I got rid of anything with defensive bonus on it, right? Because if I have attack percentage, 99% of the time I'm not going to want defense percentage on it. Now I want to see which pieces of gear I absolutely want to keep. So I'm going to do 1 round at crit rate, 1 round at attack speed, and 1 round at crit damage. The reason that I'm doing 1 round of each is that if I try to mark like all 3, well, those would be perfect pieces of gear, right? Like those I would just, perfect. I would just look at them, instant lock them, and move on. But what I kind of want to do is I want to look through the gear that has crit rate on it and see, hey, what do I have that's attack bonus with crit rate? So here I have crit rate and crit damage. Those for me are a worth to save. Those are all percentage increases to my damage. Again, crit rate only matters until the point that you crit, but attack bonus with crit damage on it, that is gear that I'm struggling to come by. So for that reason, the attack bonus percentage, that will increase my damage, and then crit damage will also increase that percentage up heavily. So for me, that is something I'm going to keep. Here, crit rate with Rage Regen, no. I don't love Rage Regen enough, and then 2 bad substats on it makes that very, very hard to keep. Crit rate with attack speed and Rage Regen, I do like this. This is a piece of gear that I think if I need a champion getting to their ult more frequently, so somebody like Deimos takes a long time to get to his ult, or if I want somebody constantly, just constantly in their ult, like Wrath could take very good advantage of these stats. So for that reason, I'm going to hold on to some of these. Here, seeing flat attack. Okay, this is for the Mana Spring. I'm going to keep this set because I have a plan for a Mana Spring champion. And I want to test that theory out specifically. So that is the only reason I'm keeping that, is for that very specific champion. Here, having attack percent bonus with crit rate and flat attack, I can kind of justify it. HP bonus gives me like the, okay, a little bit better. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's now at a 6 of 10. But then the flat defense drops it back down to a 5 to 10. So I'm not going to keep that. This set bonus is also a little strange, the Glacier. There are champions that do scale off of their max HP as well as their attack bonus, like Deimos, where I could argue to keep it. It's just kind of hard. Here, for all purposes, when I see healing effect, I typically am always going to consider this a defensive stat. So me seeing 3 defensive stats on an attack bonus, huge turnoff. Again, 3 defensive stats, huge turnoff. Probably not going to keep it. Crit rate, crit damage, and then Rage Regen. Rage Regen is kind of like a utility stat. It's not great, it's not bad, but crit rate and crit damage, these 3 stats I think are going to help push the damage on my account. But I am looking for a trifecta, and unfortunately we are not I found like 1 so far. Crit rate and attack speed, this makes me want to keep it. The HP bonus and defensive bonus means that I will probably upgrade this last out of anything, but it is crit rate and attack speed, which are stats I value heavily, so I am going to keep them. Keep that specific piece. Healing effect with Rage Regen, I haven't found a champion, like maybe like Lightlock, that could take advantage of it, but those two kind of contradict each other. That when I see those two together, I almost don't want them. And then crit rate and Rage Regen kind of don't synergize as much as I want to. Crit rate and healing effect don't synergize, so that makes it easy to eliminate some of these pieces. Here, flat attack and Rage Regen, it's one of those things I could keep this, but again, since crit rate's all the way here at the bottom, I think that's too much of a financial investment for me to invest in to see if that's even remotely worth keeping. So I'm just going to eliminate it right now. Here we have 3 defensive stats on it, so nope. 3 defensive stats. 3 defensive stats. 3. Here I upgraded this to +3 because of the crit rate and flat attack. So that meant in the past I was planning on keeping this. I can't justify keeping that any longer. This one has crit rate and attack speed, and then these other 2 stats, they're worthwhile enough, right? The HP bonus and defensive bonus, for any of my fighters, they could take good advantage of those stats. So I absolutely will keep that. Here, I'm having a very hard time justifying keeping Rage Regen with crit rate. Like, I think it's just too much utility that I'm not willing to keep it. Defensive bonus with healing effect. Again, very hard to find a champion that really wants that. Especially with attack bonus. So, no, we're just going to sell that. Attack speed, crit rate, and rage regen. Again, the attack speed is kind of making the rage regen better here. I will keep it. But again, it's probably going to be one of the lighter ones that I upgrade. It's not going to be like a first go-to one. Something like this, crit rate, crit damage, and attack speed, I can't wait to upgrade that. Here, again, there's enough good stats that I'm keeping it. I don't love it, though. Crit rate, flat attack, barely worth keeping. I would argue I could sell this. Because the crit rate is so early, I might only upgrade this to like +4, and then if it rolls really well, maybe to +8, and if the attack rolls really well, I could justify keeping it. So I'm gonna hold on to it for now. But yes, I'm more looking for things like the attack speed, crit rate, flat attack. I would ideally much prefer this to be crit damage, but that's the pipe dream at the moment. Here, just all good offensive stats, so curious to see how that rolls. Here we have HP, healing effect, and then I had crit rate and crit damage. I was so excited for this piece. But again, this is a perfect example of rolling it up to this point to then get burned on the crit rate. It's time I let this piece go. And then also, I don't want to see this piece ever again. That's just painful to look at. Here we rolled a 3.5 on the crit rate. So again, I'm going to sell it because I'm not going to equip this piece for just that crit damage. It's just very unfortunate. So goodbye. Here we have an attack speed roll of 10. This is one of those reasons where you might not just want to +16 everything. So again, that will get sold. This was interesting enough to keep for a while, but I'm again past the point of yellow gear. I want to try to eliminate yellow gear. I will keep, if it's a perfect piece, like I think this glowing yellow one is, we will keep that specifically. Here again, healing effect and rage regen together. I probably shouldn't have kept this, but I was hoping that this would be better. Also, I could argue with the insight bonus here, the 10% crit rate from here, and then if I got the insight bonus, that would be a collective 25%. Or for some of my melee fighters, like my Deimos, Salazar, Wrath, or if I Volca out, they can all heal themselves. This is where this piece of gear could, like on Volca specifically, this piece of gear could be very good. The problem is all of the stats rolled below a 2, I guess maybe on the scale of like F to like S, right? All of these rolled less than a D. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and sell it so it just doesn't show up in my rolls and whatnot. This is ideal. This would be perfect, right? If I saw this set up on a piece of gear, I would keep it. And again, it's Mana Spring. I have a Mana Spring idea, so I'm going to hold on to that for now. Here, I do have a flat stat, so I'm going to get rid of this. It's going to be too difficult for me to argue keeping this. Even set bonus, the damage increase would be impressive, but I'm at a point of I can get red gear, and I would be losing 26% damage consistently by not using a red piece of gear. Here, my attack speed rolled very poorly, and the crit rate just rolled barely good enough. But with this double defense roll, it's time I let it go. I'm at a point where I can grind gear consistently, so I'm going to start trying to be as picky as possible. Here, again, this was a flex piece that I could use on 2 different champions, and I did like this piece for a long time. It is time that I let it go, though. And again, I'm trying to eliminate any yellow gear off my account, besides like some really good nostalgia. Here, I do have 3 good stats, right? So I do have the attack speed, but this flat attack, now flat attack's not a great stat, but it rolling super low makes this piece near unusable. And then also the set bonus from it, I don't know when I want all these damaging stats and then like max HP. Again, like Deimos, yes. Volca could potentially take use of it. I don't love it though. Like 2 bad rolls, and then this is barely good enough. It's time I let it go. Flat HP and flat attack, I normally would never ever encourage. Again, here though, the 17% does make this good enough to hold on to. Anything I would say above 10% for crit rate is okay. Don't feel bad about rolling crit rate of like 10 or above. If it rolls less than 10, that is up to you. 100%, you know, make your best choice of, ooh, is this worth it? Or would I rather have like, you know, a flat attack that rolled like 200 to 300 or 400 on it, right? That's when it becomes personal preference. This is a piece I'm going to hold on to because the set bonus also makes it interesting enough. This does not feel great, but I could still argue that if I needed to hit my crit rate or attack speed on a champion, I won't feel awful about equipping this to a champion. I will argue, though, it is very close to being sold. So I'm going to hold on to it. It is not a good piece of equipment, but I would argue it's just barely bad at the moment. And unfortunately, I'm still using bad equipment, so I need to hold on to it. This is kind of in that same boat, right? When do I need that much healing effect? But I do have plenty of nightmares that will take advantage of that, like Volca and such. So I'm going to hold on to it for the exact same reason. That these 2 pieces of gear do let me hit 34% crit rate between the 2 of them. They both give me, let's see, that's 32 attack speed and 52. So 84 attack speed between the 2 of them. That's almost a second off of my attack. So those 2 I would argue are worth keeping. Here, this piece I've kept on for a long time because, again, attack speed and rage regen have great synergy. I'm trying to get rid of all my yellows. I would argue this piece could be kept for a while, but I really am at a point where I do have enough reds to equip about 10 champions reliably in just all red. So I want to get rid of these yellows for sure. And then this piece. This is a very hard piece to let go of, right? Because the crit rate is so high being up in the purple. And then the crit damage being 21% is noticeable. That's an extra 20% damage. Also, the rapidity cost makes me actually want to hold on. I'm going to hold on to it for that reason, actually. Because there's something I want to mess around with rapidity cost. So the mana spring cost that I'm thinking about putting that on Dallin. I'm sorry, not Dallin, Narvi. Narvi is who I meant, because Narvi actually gets benefits for going into her ultimate. The more times and the faster she gets into her ultimate, the more often she's using her coins. I recently unlocked Dallin onto my account, but Dallin is not performing the same way Narvi has been for me. I don't know how I feel about Dallin yet. I still want to test her out more. And I want to test her out in other levels, so I need to do my Void Rift today, which Dallin will get put through the ringer in my Void Rift. But I'm going to hold on to this because of the rapidity cost. That is interesting enough for me that I want to keep it. That was just crit rate, right? So now that we're doing attack bonus percentage, let's do... we can do things like attack speed and see which of these we might want to keep. And again, I do need to be more picky here because admittedly, if I'm not using crit rate on any of my pieces of gear, this has to add a crap ton of damage for me. So here I do have 2 offensive stats and then rage regen, which I guess I would consider like the weakest of the attack stats. I originally thought it was utility. I would argue rage regen is kind of borderline between utility and attack. I don't love this, is the quick answer. I could argue, again, for like a champion like Deimos, this could be worth keeping. I just don't love it. I don't love it enough. Yeah. Something that I could also be looking for here specifically that I just thought of. So for my healers, attack speed, flat attack, and healing effect would be me worth keeping for the record. So here I could do something like this and say, okay, all of these should be locked because attack bonus, healing effect, attack speed, and flat attack, I would throw on a bunch of my support champions. Here I do have a piece that I want to sell instantly, so let's just get rid of him right away. But that is something to consider as well, is that your healers, even though we are not like necessarily instantly looking for like healing equipment, this could be a good way for you to consider, hey, would I throw this on a healer? So here I have flat HP, not HP percentage, so that is typically not great for our healer. And then with this offensive stat here, means I'm probably not going to equip that on a healer, so we'll skip over that one. Again, flat defense I would argue is still usable on a healer, but this crit damage means no, can't keep that for a healer. HP, good for a healer, so I will hold on to that specifically. Again, we just have stats all over the place, so no, we're not going to keep that. Flat HP, flat defense, nope, we won't keep that. Click, 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 click. HP, attack speed, we'll hold on to that. Again, that's good for a healer. HP, defense, I'm sorry. HP, attack speed, worth keeping for the moment at least. Yeah, again, worth keeping for an attack-based healer. I am considering this. I'm gonna hold on to it. I don't think that's a good decision, to be honest. But I like it enough. And I could argue that if I needed this this set bonus, and again, where I'm at getting to the gear raid 19s, this is becoming more of an issue that I have to pay attention to on my account. And again, a bunch of good stats on here. I don't love the set bonus here. However, because it's a mythic gear, this will roll higher than average. So I'm going to hold on to that. But yeah, this is my system of going through and being like, hey, do I think this is worth keeping or not? Think about what champions you have on your account, if it makes sense for you to keep it. Why does it make sense for you to keep it? And there's also that argument as well, right? If you talk to a friend or if you come into my stream and you're like, hey, I have this piece of gear, so this Hawkeye amulet. What do you think of it? I'd be like, I don't like it. You have 3 of the bad flat stats on it. That's going to be very hard for me to listen to you to justify to keep it. And you might say, okay, but what about a champion like Dolores? All right, well, Dolores actually would take advantage of the attack bonus and the flat attack. Dolores does not take advantage of the attack speed, but she would not be terrible with the flat defense and flat HP. And if that's your first red, that could be used for Dolores. Yes, I guess. My argument again would be for you to upgrade this all the way to plus 16 is the problem. If this attack was in any other position, I would like this a whole lot more. I'd be like, ooh, you could try it, right? Yeah, that does make sense. Use your best judgment. Use what makes sense to you. You're not making a huge mistake. You will be spending a good chunk of gold, though. So that is the resource I want to save you from, for sure. If this had healing effect on it, this glacier piece, I would like this glacier piece a whole lot more. But again, it's going to be extremely hard for me to ever justify what champion I would want all these like this mess of stats on. For those of you still watching the video, Thank you. You guys are super kick-ass. I can't believe you are watching this long. This is definitely one of the longest videos. But, to be fair, this is how long going through some of your stats can take if you leave your game to farm overnight. I farmed, I think it was 1,500 energy on both gear raids 219 and 319. Just yesterday, we finally beat Gear Raid 219, and for anybody watching that stream, you got to see me at my angriest. I absolutely just hated this game. I could have quit yesterday. Like, I 100% was like, I could quit this game. I'm so unhappy. I'm so pissed off. I don't feel good about this. I'm not happy. And even when I beat the level, I wasn't like, yeah, hell yeah. I was just like, meh, whatever. I was so upset. I was so wildly upset yesterday. Glad we did not save that video forever. Alright, Yellow, we definitely need to get you off the account. Man, I have a lot of plus 16 pieces. Here, this is a good example as well. Even though this has the right stats on it and a good HP roll, the very low healing effect on here is going to make this like almost near impossible to play with. So I'm going to sell it just because the healing effect is so low. It's a shame because the attack speed, although that's not great, I would argue it's still good enough. But the HP roll here gave me high hopes. And then this was just the nail in the coffin for this. So I will get rid of that specifically. Again, that's a piece worth holding on to just barely. Doesn't feel great, but feels okay. This is another piece that I've been holding on to. Because of set bonus, I'm going to hold on to it longer. This is a great example of, oh, this has all the right stats on it, and it rolled like a turd. Again, we have a kind of a turd roll here. The attack speed I was trying to hold on to because 45 was my cutoff. And then the attack here, it's not terrible. But the defense and rage regen, those are both just too low. I can't justify holding on to that any longer. That's a very good piece of equipment. I'm curious why I don't have that on anybody. Interesting. This is a okay piece of equipment. Again, if this attack rolled higher, could be worth it. I'm going to hold on to it for now. It doesn't feel great, but I will hold on to it. Here we have two bad rolls on this, so I probably should get rid of it. Gonna hold on to it because 16% is kind of, it's just good enough, I guess. I don't love that I'm holding on to it, but I also think I'm just not ready to get rid of it. Here I have two defensive stats here, so yeah, I can get rid of that pretty quickly. Here the crit damage just rolled so terribly, and then the attack rolled so terribly. So I feel good about selling that. Alright guys, final run, and then we're going to call it a video. We are going to do our attack percentage and crit damage. For anybody that needs to really see the defense, use your best judgment. Again, that's going to be up to you to decide. It just depends on what stats you value, and just kind of do what I'm doing, is think about, hey, is there a champion that takes advantage of these specific stats? Does this make enough sense to me? And if the answer is no, or if you're like, I don't know what, this piece of gear is perfect. Who do I want this on? Who would take advantage of attack bonus, HP bonus, defense bonus, and then crit damage? The true answer is not a whole lot of people. Not a whole lot of champions. So this is one of those pieces of equipment I would be very hard-pressed to ever encourage a player to roll up. Even if you didn't have a whole lot of other red pieces of equipment, this next one, right? This one having flat attack and crit damage just makes it better than that other one. That other one is a little bit better for like your fighters, I guess. I still wouldn't want that on my... I would still prefer this on my fighters over the other one. But yeah, since we've already locked in place a whole bunch of our pieces that have like crit rate and crit damage, us not seeing those together is making it very easy for us to say, hey, this is instantly not worth it. This being Infernal Roar. Now, Infernal Roar is a set that I'm slowly starting to accumulate. I could potentially justify holding on to this and being like, okay, there's enough on here that I, like, you know, the set bonus will carry me. I think, though, for me to be smart, this flat HP is kind of the nail in the coffin. If this was HP percentage, I could justify keeping it. But this being flat HP and healing effect really reduces what champions could even equip this, and I would feel good about. So we're going to sell that off. Here again, we have defense percentage and healing effect. I don't know who or why I was upgrading that for, but the decision is now made. No thank you. I'm keeping that for set bonus. I'm keeping that for set bonus. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. I am done. Thank you very much for hanging out. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys found this, ladies and gentlemen, if you found this video helpful, not just guys, if you found this helpful, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button down below. If you want to come hang out and chat with us, we stream every day, Sunday through Wednesday, over at twitch.tv/sprinklebeard, mostly consistently right now. Especially in this cold weather, me and my dogs are having a harder time going out. I have heart issues, so I shouldn't be out and like hiking alone anymore in this cold weather. That could turn terrible for me. So yeah, I'm going to be streaming a lot more during the winter months. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. But of course, until that next time, ta-ta.